Welcome to Off Ledger, the podcast for accountants that explores the personal side of the profession. Becoming an accountant, and more importantly thriving as one, is no easy task. Hearing how others have navigated their paths can offer both practical insight and reassurance for those facing the day-to-day realities of the role. In each episode, we share honest, real-life stories from firm leaders, uncovering the twists, turns and defining moments that have shaped their careers. You'll hear inspiring stories, candid reflections, the occasional story of success pulled back from the brink. Subscribe to Off Ledger, and whenever you need a reminder that you are not alone, we'll be right here for you. Welcome to Off Ledger. I want to introduce you to Eriona Bajrakurtaj. She's the owner and director of Majors Accounts in London. Eriona took over her father's firm back in 2019, and since then it's been something of a roller coaster. So we wanted to share her journey. Eriona, tell us about Majors.
Hey, Andy, thank you so much for having me. Majors is, as you mentioned, it's a family-run practice based in London. We've kind of been through everything through the years, but currently we are focused on businesses in the construction, property development sector, because we're also property developers as a family, so our conversations are very different with those clients, but also high-end restaurants, because we ran a restaurant really badly, so we know, the struggles that they have. So hopefully can help them through that process to make it a lot easier and better for them to run that business, or focus on the running, not on the admin and finances and things like that, but looking forward. But yeah, that's where Majors is right now, a team all over the world. Clients are predominantly UK based, and we deliberately work with clients who have a vision. A lot of people say, well, what size are they? It doesn't really matter whether they've just started, whether they're multi-million pound businesses. It's, what is the owner's vision? Do they have a vision? What do they want to achieve? And then we know that we can work with them and hopefully help them out.
So how do you do that? I mean, how do you determine whether they've got a vision that's, just, is it, because surely that just comes over time.
It does, but do you know what? When we first started, as many businesses, when as a client comes into the office, you're like, yep, I will help you because you need the business, right? Now we're very kind of focused on when we have that first client meeting, which we have a long conversation. It's not just finding out about the business, but also the business owner themselves. What do they want to achieve? Does it sound like they're passionate, or are they looking just to make some money right now, and then there's no real plan in the future? If there's no real plan, and you can see the passion that comes out from a business owner when you're speaking to them about their business, so it's asking the right questions. There you can see, is this somebody who does have that vision and somebody that we can slot in and hopefully help them on that journey? But there are some people over the years where you try to suggest things, they're not really interested, they're not happy with their business because they haven't really taken on any advice or actioned anything that was provided. And they will sometimes ask, I didn't ask for your advice anyway. So in those instances, you're not really doing much. They're not that happy with your service. You're not happy because you're not really being able to provide any advice or make a difference to their journey. So it's kind of a lose-lose situation. Whereas when you do see someone who has that passion, has a goal, and that goal could be personal, because we can't forget business and personal life are mixed for business owners. You can't really separate the two, because the reason they've set up that business is to give themselves a better life. So their life depends on the business and vice versa. So knowing as much as possible about a business owner, I think, is super important to figure out whether there is going to be a good relationship there.
So it's quite a different firm from that point of view, but one that you enjoy running. You really
Now,
get a
yes.
lot out of it.
Now, absolutely. I have to say, when I took over, we were at the point, we were a successful business, and when I took over, we had thousands of clients. I think we're around 3,500 clients. And so there wasn't kind of, technically, I didn't have to make much of a change if I didn't want to. But when I looked at what the cost of that was, it was working 7 days a week. It was being on call, essentially, 365 days a year. So if we went on holiday as a family, if someone would call, everyone would be like, shh, be quiet because we've got a client on the phone. So that was 24/7. And for me, the catalyst was during COVID, my parents got really ill. And obviously they both work in the business. And some clients, when they called to speak to my dad specifically, I said, "Well, he can't speak right now because he literally couldn't." They were like, "I don't care. I need to find out what's going on." And at that point, I was like, "He's worked all these years, 7 days a week, for what? If something was to happen right now, if he looked back on his business journey so far, okay, business has been great, but what about personal life?" I don't want that to be me in 20, 30 years' time. I want to look back and say, I had a great business, but I also enjoyed the fruits of that labor and
Yeah.
enjoyed my life. So I just thought I don't want to do that. So with the changes that I made, now we've reduced our clients and now I'm loving the work because the team are taking on work that our team always said we want to be able to do more and things like that, but we had a bottleneck before. Now the team run pretty much everything, and I now sit on the strategic layer looking at what's next. How can we refine some processes? How can we refine services? How can we provide more for our clients? And ensuring that everyone we take on is someone we want to work with gives me the freedom and the flexibility to also have a life. So I'm loving the balance of being able to enjoy both. And I think not many business owners get that opportunity because I know it can get really hectic with running a business, but I'm really enjoying it at the moment.
And I think anyone who knows you will know that you do live that to the max. And there's very, very few people, I think, who do quite as much as you in terms of different projects and, popping up, creating new businesses like Volt, for example.
Yeah.
So, but it's not always been like that, has it? So take us back to your kind of origin story, if you like. So where before you got involved with majors, who were you, what were you doing, and what were you motivated by?
We go really far back. So I was 13 when majors started. So I was at school. And it was something that my dad started helping out just family members who needed to do their tax returns. And they were like, oh, we don't know anyone that can help us, especially in our community, because we're from Albania. So, and the Albanian community is only around 25 to 30 years old in the UK. So around that time when people started to need accountants, they weren't sure who to turn to. And my dad was working in a finance department. He was like, well, technically I'm an accountant. Let me see if I can help you. And he did a few tax returns for family members. Then their friend said, can you help? He was like, yeah, sure. And it kind of built up and he thought, I could probably do this full time. And over time, he managed to, he got an office in East London, it was at that time. And he would work there Saturdays and Sundays. But it got to a point where he couldn't do both. And it was deciding, do I continue with this and go full time? But he just got a really good salary and he had a family to feed. And he wasn't sure. My mum is amazing in giving him the support. And she was like, well, give it a go. If it doesn't work out, you can always go and get a job again, but you'll never know unless you take the plunge. So he did. And he left his job. Obviously, I was the part-time bookkeeper because when you first start a business, you don't necessarily, you can't afford people to work for you. So I was 13. I mean, what was I doing with my life until that point? It was about time that I started, you know, working working for everything that I was spending at home.
I should tell that to my kids.
My daughter's nearly 13, so we've already started to have this conversation.
I'm
She's not
sure
having
you
it
have.
for some reason. I don't know why, but but yeah, so I started Saturdays, Sundays, holidays, bank holiday. Every time that I wasn't at school, I was at the office. And it was a time when obviously we were very paper-based tech. I mean, Excel was our biggest tech that we used. And I remember my first day, my dad put in front of me some bank statements and said, do it. I was like, do what? He was like, figure it out. I was like, figure what out? I don't even know. I didn't understand what accountancy even was, right? I didn't know what an accountant
You're
did.
13.
I was
And they,
13. He
yeah.
was like, "What would you do if I wasn't here?" I was like, "Probably at home watching Tracy Beaker or something like that." He was like, "No, you gotta figure it out." And that was all he gave me. So I went on Google frantically searching, what does an accountant do? What what would they use bank statements for? You know, it was literally from scratch. And it took me, I think, around 3 weekends or so. So Saturdays and Sundays. And I got to a point where I thought I'd actually figured it out. So I called my dad over and I was like, I think I've done it. Can you check? He comes, says nothing, looks at it, scrolls up and down, Control Alt Delete. I was like, what? What'd you do that for? He was like, it's wrong. I was like, what was wrong? What did I do? He was like, figure it out. Oh my gosh. Started from scratch again. I probably did that about 2, 3 times until he said, yeah, that's right. Not that it was good or anything.
It sounds like Karate Kid. This
Yeah,
is
so
the
it
part of
literally is that. I have to say though, as a background thing, Majors Accounts is called Majors because my dad was a major in the army. So they kind of linked together. Unfortunately, none of the other team got this kind of training. They were taught really nicely, but
yeah.
I just got special treatment. But to be honest, I'm really grateful because now, looking back, it's helped me so much. Because if there is something that someone asks, can you do this? I'll say yeah, because I will figure out a way of doing it. You know, so it's given me that confidence in myself to be able to approach absolutely everything without being scared of, oh, I'm not sure if I can do this. What if I don't know? You realize that actually nobody knows anything. Everyone is guessing, everyone is learning along the way. So it's given me that confidence to just jump into things.
Brilliant. Well, it's an excellent start off to your career. So you became a kind of invaluable part of the Majors Accounts team.
Yeah.
And then how did that progress? When did you?
Yeah, so I literally grew up with the business. Over the years, the business grew all organically from word of mouth. And when it came to studying, I actually wanted to do law when I was younger. I wanted to be a lawyer of some sort. But obviously, having that conversation with my parents, they're like, so when are you going to start ACCA? So obviously, I started ACCA, the accountancy qualification, and I decided not to go to uni straight away. I finished college and I jumped straight into ACCA. At that point, there weren't hardly any exemptions like we have nowadays. So starting from scratch, I understand now why in the past people would go to uni for 3 years and then start ACCA. The jump was huge. And I was used to being like top student at school. And from August, I started ACCA in September. We did our mock exams and I was like, I've become dumb over summer. What's happened to me? I don't understand. It was so difficult, but I did the first 3 exams in 3 months, which would have been the equivalent of 3 years of uni, whilst working, this is. Because I was never given a day off, ever.
I'm getting that sense. That doesn't surprise me.
Since
With this,
13, I haven't really had any days off, if I'm honest. But I continued with ACCA and obviously whilst working, learning more and more every single day, reviewing accounts, bookkeeping, everything that we did in the office, and I became practice manager. And in 2019, I qualified with ACCA a lot earlier, but I got my practicing license. At that point, I took over the business, but a few years before, I started to look into kind of our processes and how we were working. The way that we were set up, we had a whole bunch of filing cabinets. We didn't have an Excel document or anything with a client list because my dad would pride himself on his memory. And honestly, I haven't seen anyone with a memory like his. But when I needed to find out who the director of a company was, or when their VAT quarter end was, or when their year end was, I had to go and ask him. He was like, ask me, we're never going to get bigger than this. I will know whatever you need. I got it like this, which is great. Great for his memory. Problem is, if he's in a meeting and I'm going in every 5 minutes, like, Dad, what's this? What's that? Didn't make any sense. So I started my own little cute project, it was called. I went through every single folder in the filing cabinet, starting to collate all the information of who are our clients, who are the directors and shareholders, and what are their year ends, all things like this, with a piece of paper, writing them all down and then transferring them into Excel. And everyone was like, oh, bless her. She just wants to like be busy and do something, because this is not valuable one bit, but let's just let her do it. And I knew this. I could hear everyone saying this, and my dad was basically saying the same thing. But I carried on, put together an Excel spreadsheet. Then everyone was talking about this thing called MTD. What was this at that time?
Definitely heard of that. That's definitely come
Now we've
up.
heard of it, right?
Yeah.
Once or twice. And I didn't know what it was. So I need to go out and research. Is this something that was an obligation on the client, or was it ours, or how will it work operationally? And I got invited to QuickBooks Connect, it was that year, conference. I'd never been to an accounting conference ever. As accountants, traditionally, you never even speak to the accounting practice down the road because they may want to steal our ideas and clients and all of that, right? So when I was invited, I thought, what am I going to do there? Is it just a bunch of guys talking about how much tax has your client paid this year? And that's it. When I turned up, it was this world that I did not know existed. I was like, where have we been living all this time? How did I not know that any of this stuff existed? And I remember all of the stands that were there. I'd walk past them and not look at them directly, because if they asked me a question, I was like, I don't even know what they do. Right?
But I've got a spreadsheet.
Yeah, I've got an Excel spreadsheet. But I'd literally try and walk past and sneakily look at what it says on their stand and what might they do. And then the thing that shocked me was the sessions, right, of panel sessions and keynotes. I was just like, these are other accountants giving advice to us, but we're their competition. I'm sitting there taking notes like, I've never heard any of this stuff before. This is so cool. And I went back to the office. I was like, guys, we're going to do something completely different. And they looked at me like, what's her next project now? And I was like, we are going to go completely digital. We're going to be able to provide a faster service, a better service, and we don't have to do as much manual data entry, neither do our clients. We'll be able to get information straight away, all of this stuff. And they all looked at me like, yeah, because obviously they'd never heard of it. But I was just saying things that were out of this world that didn't really exist for them. And I tried for 6 months to entice them, to be like, guys, come on, shall we do this together? Let's do this. 6 months went by, nothing happened. At the end of each month, they're like, Eriona, we've got deadlines. Is it okay if we do it next week? And they'd go to my dad and he'd be like, yeah, don't worry about it. Forget that. Do what you need to do right now. And when I officially got my license, then in 2019, I was like, right, my way or the highway. If you want to stay working here, this is what we're going to do. If you don't, you're free to go.
And so this was basic using digital tools. This wasn't a complete left field approach.
No, this was just, it was technically for us because we only used Excel, and at that point we just started to use Sage Desktop.
Wow.
That was it, right? So for our team, telling them, I even introduced emails for everybody. Before, we had one Gmail that the whole firm used, and then trying to track everything. So it took a long time for me to convince people to use their own email or other emails as well. So if you're telling them we're going to use a whole bunch of other softwares, they're looking at me like, no, we're not going through that again. And yeah, so technically I would say for them it was probably something that was going to be a major, major change. And realistically it was, because everything was being tracked manually. All work was being done manually. In our office, we had 28 people at that time, all in one big space. Half of our office at the back was full to the ceiling with paperwork from where clients would bring in paperwork for their accounts, and we kept all those boxes for them. And then we also had a storage unit that was as big as our office with older paperwork. That was also packed to the ceiling. So
I can't think of a better way of dealing with it than just piling it up. I don't think there's any software that would help with that, is there?
Absolutely not. So if you're telling them going from that to, we're not going to see any paper ever again, like, yeah, sure. How are we going to get the information from the clients? Clients are not going to use apps. We don't know what these apps are. That's just impossible. And no one else is doing it because it was still relatively early in that journey. Not many other firms were doing this kind of 2016, 17, around that time. So they were like, why do we need to change? It's working. The business is profitable. We've got thousands of clients. There's really no need for us to change.
So how did that then pan out? Because obviously you can't really sustain that. How did everyone get on with it?
It's safe to say they didn't really like it.
No.
And do you know, when I say looking back, I think what they didn't like is the fact that they were worried that we no longer needed them. Not that it was as much of an issue with the software itself. It
Right.
was just, okay, so if the software does all the data entry and then it feeds into our bookkeeping software, and then from there we can connect it to tax calc. So where do we fall into this, right? Obviously, the human is needed every step of the way, but they just felt like a whole load of their own role had disappeared. And if that was the case, they're no longer needed. So there is no future for them in this firm. And so there was a lot of delay and dragging their feet and just not wanting to do it. Um, and in the end, so we started it, as I mentioned, 28 people. By the end of it, we were left with about 4
Wow.
same team.
Wow.
And I regret it because I absolutely loved that team. I wanted their experience to shine through using the tech, right? Because they had experience of the clients, of how they work. So they were able to have those conversations. They built years of building relationships with those
Yeah.
clients. And that's what I wanted to get out of them, not sitting there copying things out of a receipt. It was to really shine. But unfortunately, they didn't see it that way.
So what was the impact on you though? Because you're, with you're growing up, you're taking on this firm, you're making these decisions that are really impactful, having a big impact on what's happening in the firm. Are you completely confident with what you're doing? Are you doubting yourself? How are you reacting to that?
I was not one bit confident throughout the whole thing.
Right.
I was so scared throughout everything because I didn't have anyone to kind of bounce off of to see whether, am I doing the right thing here? Should I be doing it in a different way? And there was a lot of learning throughout the process. Like, we take on a piece of tech, it wasn't the right one, so start from scratch, choose a different one, trying to connect them together. Um, but again, I was just guessing. The whole thing was a guessing game, and nobody was understanding what I was doing. So it did seem like I had no clue. I was implementing all of these things, and because I was trying to do so much, from the outside it looked like a mess, because there was a period where we still continued to we needed to do the daily work, but we were also trying to transfer everything over to the new system. So there was a little bit of time where it was duplicated. And obviously people, I guess, were a lot more tired trying to figure out, are we doing this for the old way for this job or the new way? We need to get clients. If clients weren't using it, then there was no way of using the new way of working. So it seemed like such a mess. And my dad was really helpful throughout the whole thing. He was like, cool, you carry on. No one's going to use it. And our clients are all going to leave, and everything we've worked for is going to disappear, and we'll be out on the streets. But you've got an idea, go with it. And
So
I
it's
was,
nice you had that support there.
yeah, I had the best support every single day, by the way. And I sat there and I was like, I got this, I got this. Internally, I was like, oh my God, I really hope I got this. I don't know whether what I'm doing is right or wrong. I was like, on paper, it makes sense. In reality, this is so much harder than I thought it was going to be, but it didn't help. It was like almost having like a ton of bricks on your back trying to get to a destination, and it was the hardest thing. I'm so happy that I persevered. And I recently, last year, one of my team members, we were having a review, and because it's been a while now since I made the transition, you don't stop and think, oh wow, look how much the business has changed. If you actually think what we were doing then and what we're doing now, it's actually almost a completely different business. And I was having the yearly review with her, and she actually started crying and said, I'm so happy that I decided to believe in you and stick with it, because this has completely changed, our working life, the way that she's working, the things that she's doing. And I was just like, oh my gosh, I've actually made a difference here,
Yeah, how did that feel when you
It it was really weird hearing it from somebody else who's actually been through that journey, and it just took me a minute to step back, because I would obviously always say, It's been a huge change. It's great. I can see everything that's happened. But for someone who's been there on that journey and has seen all the ups and downs, all the team leaving, being pressured by the team, let's all go, otherwise you're not going to have a space here. But she persevered. She believed in me and she stayed. And when she said that, it was like, okay, now that was worth it. That's when I really, truly felt like what I did was actually worth it. And yeah, no, every time I've had clients say similar things before in the past, which makes you feel like, oh, every time someone says it, I'm like, okay, thank God, because at every step of the way, I was so scared that I'm doing the wrong thing. But
I think you have to have that affirmation, right? That from somewhere that's saying actually that what you did was good, what you're doing is good. Otherwise, I don't think you could continue.
it's hard, right? Because we doubt ourselves all the time. And from what you see online or just from the outside, from someone who is considered successful, you just think, wow, they just know what they're doing. They've smashed it every single day. They wake up, make the right decisions. Look how successful they are. And you don't realize that actually every single day they're just hoping they're making the right decision, and they've had all kinds of ups and downs, and no one really truly knows um, what they've been through. But when somebody actually says to you that you have made a difference to my life for the better, it makes it all so worthwhile.
There's the validation right there. And I think you're right. And this is what, off ledger is all about, is saying, look, okay, you may want to be the leader in a major firm, no pun intended. But you want to be a leader in a major firm. Maybe the path, isn't as straightforward as it looks when you see someone who's got there and they've mastered everything and they're all in control.
Yeah.
So what about because you had an experiment with some offshoring, didn't you?
I did. So after we digitized, I was really happy with the team and everyone we had there. I got pregnant and but this time around, because this was my second child, first time I only had 2 months of maternity leave. So I thought this time around, all the systems are in place. The team are really adequate at using them. They know the clients. I might actually have a decent maternity leave this time. So I was really excited, kind of calm. And I told the team, like, guys, I'm pregnant. I'm going to be giving birth in November. So just to let you know, we didn't really need to do much because the way that it was all set up, I was already working on just the strategic layer. We had every other kind of layer that was able to support everything that we needed. By November, nearly all of the team left, and I could see them leaving one by one. One person came to me and said, I'm being pressured to leave. I really don't want to. But I just thought I'd let you know. I was like, yeah, I've noticed. So in that time, I didn't have much time before giving birth, right? So I had to somehow figure out a way to ensure that we can recruit so our business can keep going, because we had still thousands of clients that needed to be serviced. And during that time, recruiting in the UK was an absolute joke. It took me 4 months to try and find a receptionist, and all I could get was someone that wanted £50,000. And I was just like, I don't know whether I'm out of touch or that seems like it's not reasonable for the role. But nevertheless, you have to do something. You can't just sit down and die, right? So I had to figure out, and next, the only kind of step that seemed the most logical was, let's try offshoring. That was the first time we'd ever tried it. I was always against it, like so many people were at that time. But for us, it was a critical lifeline to allow us to keep going, because we just couldn't find the team to be able to do the work. So as the team disappeared one by one, I added more and more people offshoring. So by the time I gave birth, I still had a full team, but this was all a brand new team. First time we were offshoring. I mean, it was beneficial that we were completely digital, so there wasn't any need to scan anything and send it over. They worked exactly like our team did here in the UK. So operationally, it was fine. The only problem is this is a brand new team. They don't know any clients. They're not familiar with our processes, although there was a step-by-step process that we had on our practice management. It was still they needed hand-holding. So I gave birth on Saturday. 6 days later, I was back helping out the team, just holding their hand throughout the process, getting them used to our business, I guess. But also, it was a learning curve for us. Like, how do we work with a team that's completely offshore? We had had our team beforehand. They'd go away. For example, one team member went to Italy for a month, and he wanted 2 weeks of annual leave, and the other 2 weeks he wanted to stay there but work from there, and it was fine. But that was only 2 weeks. The rest of the team were in the UK or in the office. So going from that to a massive kind of noisy office to silence, and pretty much everyone was offshore. We had a handful of people in the UK, was a huge transition. I'd also just given birth. So it was a great experience, but what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, right?
That's right. Keep telling yourself that. Yeah.
I don't know how many times I have to tell myself this. I'm hoping that I won't need to. But yeah, it wasn't the best experience, I have to say. It was super, super difficult, but it kind of reinforced the fact of how important the changes that we made were, and especially now that this is what the world is. Like our operations manager that was with us during just before COVID, she also got pregnant at the same time. She said, "I want to move back home because it's my first child. I don't really have anyone else here, and I want my parents to help me out. Can I work from there?" I was like, "Go ahead." She's in China. She's our operations manager now.
And she's still based in China.
Still based in China. I haven't seen her since pre-COVID. I see her every day on Teams, but I haven't physically seen her since COVID because she doesn't need to be here. So it's given us that confidence and flexibility. And even the team clients, when they come in, they're like, "Oh, I need to speak to Stella." I'm like, "Okay, do you want to sit down?" He's like, "No, I want to see her." "Well, she's not here, she's in China." And they're like, "No, I've just spoken to her. I know that she's here." I was like, "Yeah, you spoke." Everything's connected so that you can speak to her, but she's not actually here. You can see her on Teams if you'd like. But the flexibility it has had for everyone involved, for us, for our team, for our clients, it's been amazing now, but it was a journey to understand kind of what the best way to go around it was. And I'd say, looking back, offshoring only works if you treat that team as your team are in the UK, as if they were sitting in your office. No difference. A lot of people don't like to allow the offshore teams to speak to clients or anything like that. We have heads of departments that are in the offshore team. All of them have access to our clients because we need them to build that relationship for clients to be able to trust them. I don't want to be the bottleneck for everyone to say, "Eriona, can you do this for me?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure." They'd speak to the team. They come back to me. I go back to the client. It just wouldn't work. No work would ever get done. We don't have time for that. So this way means that we are set up exactly the same way as we were previously with the entire team in the office, all of them having access to clients. Then it does work.
Then it works. So, in terms of your journey, I mean, like I said, it's been a roller coaster. There's been good times, and there's been quite a lot of times where you must have been panicking somewhat. What have you got now? When you look around you now, what brings you joy?
Being able to have built a business that doesn't require me to be there 24/7, that's self-sufficient. That I think is a huge, huge achievement to allow me to be able to do other things. Getting to that point, I think a lot of business owners find it really difficult. They feel like they need to be there 24/7, like my dad always was. He was like, "I have to be the first one here, I have to be the last one to leave." But then what's the point of building a business and having a team if you are there every single second? So I think being able to have that self-sufficiency is really, really important. The flexibility, and I think giving my dad his life back. I mean, I've given myself my life back, but giving my dad, like, everything he's worked for now, he still works, but because he enjoys it. He works a few hours a day, and he says I've been hearing him say to my mum, like, "Oh, I love this way of working. This is so amazing." Sometimes he'll get up and he's got Teams on his phone and he'll respond to some team members from bed, whereas he would never have dreamt of being able to do anything like. He was chained. The analogy of being chained to a desk, he was pretty much literally chained to a desk. We had, in 2019, of those people that signed into the our iPad in the office, in a 3-month period, there were 1,200 meetings. So, and they were nearly all seen by him in a 90-day period.
Wow.
1,200 people. Now, we'll see maybe 5 people a week, and they are people that we've requested to come down because we're gonna have different kinds of conversations. We're looking at future investments. It's not just generic, "Here's your set of accounts." It's much deeper conversations, so they're much more enjoyable, and he loves coming in for those kind of meetings. So, yeah, I think giving my dad his life back probably was a huge, huge achievement.
Fantastic. What a story, Eriona, and thank you for sharing that with us.
Thank
And I think hopefully that will be inspiration for someone else who's out there listening who wants to be where you are and to know that they don't have to get it right every time. And I think that's the message that that you give. But you've achieved so much. Well done for everything you've done. I think is absolutely phenomenal. So thank you very much for being with us today, and thank you very much for listening. You've been listening to Off Ledger, the podcast where accountants share their personal stories of success and failure as they evolve to become leaders in the profession.